So thank you, everybody, for coming to the April 13th City Council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting format. The City Council meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, which allows the public to view and participate in the meeting through Zoom, in addition to attending the meeting in person. As a result, in order to conduct the meeting in an orderly manner, certain protocols are to be followed. The host will keep all participants muted online until public comment is requested or a public hearing is opened. The City Council will first solicit comment from those attending the meeting in person. At the appropriate time, the mayor or host will specifically solicit comment from the Zoom participants. Comment will be solicited from those participating via PC and phone application at that time. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand virtually. The mayor or host will individually recognizing those wish to speak, and you'll be unmuted at that time, and your microphone will be remuted after you have spoken. In order to raise your hand, if you go to the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, there will be a reactions button. If you push that button, it will raise up another menu, which provides a raise the hand option, and then you simply do the same thing again in order to lower your hand. And so that is the protocols, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Call the meeting to order. Everyone rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
Council will note that you received a revised agenda, including oaths of office for our appointment of planning commissioners. And the council will also note that there was a revised resolution 2317 set out for council that included in condition 23.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda, including untabling items under general business, the park, I-35 industrial park, various resolutions. So I made a motion. Does anyone second it?
Second.
Motion by myself, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Agenda's adopted. We have no presentations, proclamations, or acknowledgements. Is there anyone here that cares to speak under public comment, which does not include anything that's on the agenda tonight? Please come on up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
My name is Todd Bergstrom, 2321 Sire Court. In June, we're hosting a Fox 9 night here at the park in town, and I'm seeking permission to put tents up along the cart path, or the walking path up there behind by St. Nicholas Church back there. Thought I'd ask if we can get permission to do that.
Yeah, have you worked with anyone at any of the city staff yet on this?
This is the first we've heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there any reason that this would be a obstacle?
I won't answer that without having any specifics, Mr. Mayor.
Rich?
There may be a non-right-of-way, you might be on private property on parts of it. So we only own a limited amount of land next to the trail.
Well, we would go like towards the church property.
Yeah, so if the church is okay with you.
Yeah.
then
Yeah, if it's, yeah, I don't hear any glaring objections to working with that. I think you still have to work with city staff to do whatever needs to be done for it, but I don't think you'll see any pushback on this.
So what are you saying I should?
You should come in and talk to us tomorrow, Todd.
Well, I'm a little busy tomorrow, but
Yeah.
just come in and, talk to you and,
Yeah, show us, we'll pull up an aerial photo, you show us where you're looking to put it, and we'll see if there's any concerns that are raised by what you're proposing. But it's hard to respond if you just bring it up at a meeting with no reference, and it's the first we heard of it.
This isn't something that's, I would imagine, be too controversial, too difficult to tackle. This is a conversation type
Yes.
position. All right. I don't think you'll meet a ton of pushback on it, but it's not something we would do here at the council meeting.
All right, well, I'll draw up a little map and bring it in, show it to you, and then we should be good to go.
Perfect.
I would assume. All right, thank you.
Anyone else here to speak under public comment on something not on the agenda? Please, come on up.
Hi, I'm Vita Konitz, 9830 247th Street East. First of all, I have a question. Did you all get the letter from the Elko New Market, the New Market Township Board addressed to you? You have that in your meeting packet? Thank you. My second is a comment. 115 people showed up here, and you guys all tabled any discussion of this or resolution of items regarding Niagara at your last meeting. And now, with one quick vote and absolutely no debate, no discussion, we're here and you're telling us it's on the agenda. And I think I speak for everyone in the room. We're extremely disappointed. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Is there anyone online? Okay. We'll close public comment. Anyone have questions or comments, anything on consent?
Just a quick one, we don't need to poll anything, I don't think. Anything of note, I tried to read the engineering update thing, and to be honest, and I'm not knowing what was new or not with underline or cross out, anything of note.
The primary change talks about how we're going to be inspecting projects for sediment and erosion control, because we have two applicable permits. One will be the inspector's response, or the developer's responsibility. Sorry. Two items. Well, one main item is going to be how we inspect construction sites going forward, because we have two permits that apply. One is a construction stormwater permit from the MPCA that applies to all sites over 1 acre anywhere in the state. The developer is responsible to provide those inspections, and we monitor to make sure they're getting done. The second permit is our MS4 permit, which the city's responsible to inspect. It lays out when we're going to do that, how we're going to do that, what sites are high priority, what sites are low priority, and that the cost gets billed back to the developers.
It's a pretty standard
Yep,
stuff.
yep.
Okay, cool. Motion to approve consent agenda.
Motion by Josh. Second by Kate, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, consent passes. So we have a couple oaths of office to administer. For our planning commission positions. Casey. Not your first rodeo, but we'll hold this up here so you can kind of read it as well. So, hold your right hand. I state your name.
I, Casey Pico,
Do solemnly swear to support
do solemnly swear to support
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully
and to discharge faithfully
the duties of the Office of Planning Commission
the duties of office of Planning Commission
of the City of Elko, New Market, Minnesota,
of the City of Elko, New Market, Minnesota,
to the best of my judgment
to the best of my judgment
and ability,
and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Or do you prefer Joe?
Joe works.
Joe? All right. Well, I'll hold this right here so you can read along with me. Raise your right hand. I state your name.
I, Joseph Heimrel,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution
to support the Constitution
of the United States,
of the United States,
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the State of Minnesota,
of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully
and to discharge faithfully
the duties of the Office of Planning Commission
the duties of Office of Planning Commission
of the City of Elko, New Market,
of the City of Elko, New Market,
Minnesota,
Minnesota,
to the best of my to the best of my judgment
to the best of my judgment
and ability,
and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations. Okay, we have no public hearings, so on to general business. So this will be the Park I-35 land use items.
Mr. Mayor, the council's received 2 presentations on this item, one in December, plus an updated one just at the last meeting. Staff is not planning to give that presentation again. However, we will stand for any questions that the council might have.
Okay. Council, where do you want to start? We had a lot of information. We had well, first for the audience that are here. So untabling the matter allows us to discuss it. And I know the comments early on were that this would be a quick vote. The idea is not to have a quick vote. By untabling it, it actually allows us to have debate and discuss the item. So that's what we're doing here. So does anybody have concerns that they want to bring up? I know we kind of went through this at length at the last meeting.
I assume we're looking to do these one by one, so I mean, if there are no questions with, one, we could move on, or what are your thoughts?
Well, I first wanted to throw it out to see if anyone had any general thoughts or comments that they wanted to start with. Were you able to pull up an image of the site at all?
We can pull up.
Sure. One question that I know there's probably a little confusion on, and Andrea, maybe while he's pulling that, maybe you can help. Can you explain what the key difference is between the preliminary and the final plat from a practical standpoint?
So the preliminary plat lays out the proposed lots and outlots, and basically lays out what they're intending to do with those lots and outlots, and the public improvements that are proposed, sometimes some private improvements, for review by the city. And that's where the primary major review for that project is done. And once it's done, staff, engineering, planning weighs in, and they give all of their conditions for moving forward with the final plat, which is the final that's approved and recorded with the county. So most of the work is done on the preliminary plat. When they come in with the final, after they've kind of gone through all those details, they come back with the final and has to basically match up with all the conditions that have been recommended with the proposed initial preliminary plat.
So the preliminary plat is, I don't want to call it a high-level concept plan, but it's really a draft of what the final product is going to be. Then any recommendations and changes that come up afterwards would be part of the final plat. Is that accurate? Okay. So from a property standpoint, is there, I should say from like a zoning and guidance standpoint, is there, being that the property is guided for industrial through our comp plan, if, for example, we as a council decided we don't accept this, we don't want it to be industrial anymore, what kind of risk do we have as a city in that case?
The property owner could sue you, and they would win, because the law, as the law stands, the zoning has to match up with the comprehensive plan. So you have to rezone it consistent with your comprehensive plan
Okay.
guidance.
Okay, just wanted to clarify that. It's not really a plat question, but it was
No.
along the same lines.
And maybe a follow-up to that, I think it's a good question. If there were changes that were wanting to be made to that, and maybe this is more Tom too, or Renee, like, what kind of process would we have to go through? It would be one question. And the second question would be, any applications that have already been submitted the current zoning, prior to us even hypothetically thinking of rezoning it or doing something else, still, the way it stands now, it applies to the applications that we have in hand, correct? So if, let's hypothetically say 6 months down the road, 2 years down the road, we were to change it, any applications we have right now would still be applied to the current zoning when those applications were submitted. Correct.
So in other words, we can't change the guidance, we can't change the zoning while an application is pending, is that kind of?
Yeah, or we could, but it wouldn't apply to this application per se.
Right,
Right.
okay.
And the process to change zoning, I mean, that, I assume would be a lengthy,
It would be a comprehensive plan amendment if you're looking for it to be something other than industrial, or as it's guided within the comp plan. And then after that has been completed, then you would have the option to then pursue rezoning at that point.
and I assume there's lots of variables that might be involved in that. You know, we'd have to apply counties comp plan, regional comp plan. I mean, so our piece is a piece of it, of course. But there's other layers that, you know, it would have to jive with. Any changes we potentially propose would have to comply with like county comp plan or regional.
Not necessarily, but
Okay.
they would have an opportunity to weigh
Comment,
in
yeah.
and comment, yeah.
Yeah, the county would be looking at any changes, how it would impact their systems and areas under their jurisdiction. The Met Council's gonna look and see if those changes that you proposed are consistent with the regional system plans and your owning system plans, and whether or not there needs to be changes to those in order for everything to stay copacetic.
I'm gonna ask a couple questions on the site plan, but did anyone else have anything else to jump into first? Okay. So I'm looking at the site plan, and I know some of the neighbors that live off County Road 2 across the street from it have expressed some concerns about visibility. I'm just curious, can you kind of show on here where I think Renee mentioned there was gonna be a berm added?
Okay, so those are issues that are specific to the site plan. They're not part of the application tonight, so we don't have any of those
Oh, you
plans
don't have
immediately
any of
available,
those.
because that's a separate application.
Got it, okay.
Those materials were in the last packet and publicly available for anybody who wants that information.
Okay,
So, and Mr. Mayor, if I may.
please.
No, so I mean, I think, that it brings up a good question, or a good point, I think. Tonight, what we're looking at is, I mean, in the order of my brain, it's rezoning. Rezoning from urban reserve to limited industrial, or industrial limited, or I-1. And any of these, including the grading permit, which I'll just have some general questions on, don't specifically pertain to any like the Niagara piece.
That is
of it.
correct.
So, and I've been trying over the last few days, whatever, to really untangle as much as I can from that and really kind of parse this out so that I know that this specifically is the land use, you know, any other future applications, potential applications or projects that go in here, including and up to, you know, the Niagara one, but not specific to Niagara.
Correct. So what we're doing is, I think the mayor aptly described it, is we're approving a draft of a plat that includes one lot and some outlots. In order for anybody to build anything, you have to approve the final plat. There are there are 23 conditions in place that have to be met in order for that to happen, including the city obtaining water appropriation permit so that we have capacity for uses that might go in there from a regulatory standpoint. So the council is not approving any specific project. Even if the final plat was approved, it wouldn't be approving any specific development. However, upon approval of the final plat, any on that lot that would be created, anything that complies with the city's zoning ordinance could go there potentially, unless it needs any additional approval such as a conditional use permit or something like that. But at this point tonight, none of those are being approved, but it is the first step towards that process. And you have set it in motion that if the boxes can be checked, all those conditions can be met within the preliminary plat approval, it would allow them to apply for a final plat approval.
So if no, is the work that's supposedly gonna be done on the trees, the tree removal, how does that fall in if no construction can
I
actually?
can explain that.
Please.
So your code allows, for any development, for upgrading permit can be issued after approval of the preliminary plat, but it can only go as far as grading. Tree removal is part of grading, it's a precursor to grading.
And have we, is there precedence for, or is this consistent with previous practice or with other projects in town over the last few years or timeframe? that-
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think of 291 where they were pushing dirt for quite a bit, moving stuff around. And I don't know where that ended up in the total approval process of anything, but.
But it's not uncommon for us to issue grading permits based on preliminary plat approval. In fact, we've done it for most of the projects in my experience and in my career with the city.
And so if we were, similar along the lines of your questioning or questions before, I mean, not that we have to follow precedents all the time, but I mean, it would potentially give further rationale for litigation if we were to start treating this land, again, take the projects out of it. That's what I've been trying to do, remind myself, take the project, any projects out. If we were to start doing something different for this particular plot, could it open us up for lawsuits or pushback or, not that I care about pushback, but like
Service.
lawsuits, yeah.
You are required to treat developers, anybody who comes in for any sort of application similarly. And you have to have a rational basis for any decision that you make. So those would be a basis for somebody to challenge a denial of that. I have yet to.
Speak up. Can you speak up? We can't hear you at all back here.
Sure. The city's required to treat similar applicants similarly, and they have to have a rational basis for any decision that they make, whether it's to deny or to approve. And so that would always be a basis for somebody to challenge the denial of grading. But usually it's up to the engineer to determine that that is something that is reasonable as long as they provide their grading plan and it meets the city requirements and security for that. It'd be unusual not to approve that, so.
And just to continue to beat this one a little bit, it would be the landowner and/or the potential developer that would be the one challenging it, not any specific applicant for a project or potential project or anything like that, not the
Correct.
business itself.
Yep.
Yeah.
So can I ask a quick question? As far as the grading goes, take the other entity out of this, and would this grading be a normal grading that anybody else, let's say Niagara does not come, would the grading that they are going to be doing, is it acceptable and common practice for any other business that would possibly go there? Or are we going to be hindering trees that could be saved by not doing the grading right now because other businesses might want to keep those trees? Do you understand what I'm asking?
Good point.
Do you want to handle it, Rich, or do you want me
Sure.
to?
So if we compare this, say, to a residential development, they're preparing lots for the construction of homes. They don't know exactly what type of home, how big it is.
Rich, can you speak in the microphone?
Sorry. I was comparing to a residential development where a developer's coming in and preparing lots for homes. They're going to grade some sort of a pad. They don't know how big that house will actually be, what style of house it might actually be. But they do a mass grading so that, you know, if they got too much in one area, they bring it to the other area, they prepare it, they remove the trees. And this is really no different. They're preparing these lots on this property for industrial buildings. The actual building that goes on Lot 1 might end up being different than the one that's currently under application, but it will still be most likely something of that size. No one's going to come in and put a little bitty building on a 30-acre lot. So yeah, it's comparable. The other thing to keep in mind is that the grading that's done as part of this permit is done at the developer's risk. If nothing gets approved after that, he's not reimbursed, the city's not on the hook. It's got to be stabilized, and that's his loss. So it's not a pre-approval. He's doing it at his own risk. But it can be one of the longer duration activities on a construction site. And so it's common in not just Elko, Newmarket, other cities, that grading permits are issued with preliminary plat.
Thank you.
As far as when we get to the final plat stuff, is that where the water appropriations permit, we'd be passing something preliminary upon approval of the appropriations permit, and that would be included in the final plat, is that?
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to be clear. Any other general questions?
Maybe less general and just more, and that's where I was, instead of bouncing back and forth, that I didn't know.
Well, that's fine, I was just gonna
Yeah.
start going through each
Yeah.
one, so. So let's look at the wetland replacement plan and, for Park I-35. Is there anyone that has some concerns on that, some questions? Anything that we want to discuss?
No, I mean, this one to me seems, for as large of a property as it is, how small or in relation to the property itself, the impact to wetlands seems relatively small. Am I correct in that? I mean, I don't know, just proportionally compared to even like Boulder
So-
Heights and some of the other ones that we see.
So I sat in on the TEP meetings, and they scrutinized it pretty carefully to make sure that there were no unnecessary or undue impacts. And so what's the TEP panel, who are experts that work in the wetland industry, felt that the impacts were acceptable. But the applicant knows and certainly did as good a job as they could of minimizing those and still meeting other constraints that apply that may not be readily apparent by looking at a map, but they're there.
Okay. Any other thoughts? If not, if anyone wants to make a motion on 2316?
I'll break the seal. I'll make a motion to approve resolution 23-16.
I'll second it. So we have a motion by Josh, a second by myself. Any further discussion before we call for a vote?
This one just seems straightforward to me.
Yeah. All right, all in favor of resolution 2316, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, that passes. So next, the preliminary plat. Does anyone have any comments or anything they want to discuss?
I thought,
No,
oh, okay.
I asked my questions.
No, I mean, I had a question just related to, and maybe this is actually should wait for the findings of fact now that I think about it. I wrote it under preliminary plat, but I might be wrong. Question number 4, related to, it says the proposed use can be accommodated with existing public services and will not overburden the city's service capacity. Is that the findings of fact that we should be talking about that under, or is that under this too? Any ideas? My question is.
What page are you on, on?
I have no idea.
Councilman?
I didn't do as good as thorough of his job as I did of marking down exactly pages.
That sounds like a finding as part of the preliminary plat approval.
So what it says, the finding says, the parcel can be served by the city's existing public services, including sanitary sewer and water infrastructure that are available at the perimeter of the site and by the city's overall municipal water system and regional sanitary sewer system, provided the city obtains a water appropriation permit increase from the Minnesota DNR consistent with this application. So that's a finding of fact based on the information we have right now. And let's say based on any updates to what the DNR will require if pumping and stuff were to find that we don't have the capacity, does that change that finding of fact, I guess?
Well, if we don't have the capacity, so remember, this is contingent upon getting the appropriation permit. So if it's found that we don't have it, then,
Okay,
I mean, that's why the condition is in there,
okay.
to specifically address that issue.
And then I know that Renee had mentioned, or in an update or whenever, that a noise study was going to be updated or requested. Does that tie into this preliminary plat, or would that?
That is specific to
To
the
the-
site, that is not
Okay.
to the plat.
Okay, that was my question.
Any other questions or comments? If not, any motions?
Just one question on the amended language, for the water appropriation permit to be included. Do we put ourselves in a box by including the specific amount, of up to 365? Let's say DNR comes back and says you can only do 350. I mean, we can revise this for the final plat or,
Good question.
I mean, I guess that seemed very specific and I just didn't know if we wanted it that specific.
The reason that we made it specific is the request for 365 accommodates the first phase of Niagara, but also provides additional capacity for other growth in the community. So if it's something less than that, we want the opportunity to revisit it and not just making an automatic approval, because it might turn into a situation where there's no additional capacity for other growth in the community. So we specifically named it as 365. We can always revisit that later, but it was intentionally noted that way.
So it would allow us to revisit it if it was lower, yes.
Yes.
Is that, I don't know how many times we've been through this. We certainly haven't as a council, but is that normal to where the DNR would come back and say, well, let's negotiate, you can have this amount, but you can't have?
Well, they don't negotiate. They will tell us what they believe is able to be provided based on their analysis.
Okay.
We don't anticipate that there will be any issues with the capacity based on what is currently being pumped in the area, the historical records that we have, the knowledge that our experts have of the aquifer.
I guess
But
what I'm
that
asking
potential
is, do we have
exists.
to start the process over?
No.
Okay, that was ultimately where I was going with that. Okay. Any other questions or motions? I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2317. Any seconds?
And adopt the findings of fact?
I'm sorry?
And adopt the findings of fact?
Oh, we don't do that in separate motions.
Okay.
So yeah, just 2317. Any seconds?
Where's the contingency?
No seconds?
Yeah, well,
Sorry, they asked.
no, yeah, I'll second that.
Okay, that's a motion by myself, a second by Josh.
And-
Any further discussion?
And so, just to reiterate from my brain, this is the preliminary plat. There's gonna be a further chance, and again, this is the land, so I gotta stop myself too. This is for the land use, this is for the plot itself, the plat itself, and not specific to any, potential project, including Niagara.
But, yes, but to be clear, by approving the preliminary plat,
Check the boxes.
they can check the
Right.
boxes for the final plat, and if the final plat is approved, permitted uses that follow the zoning ordinance can then locate on the lot that is adopted, that has been approved as part of that plat.
Assuming that the site plan and all of that stuff gets hammered out and figured out, and that, because my question goes to, this is where we talk about the noise, the sound, the light mitigation, and all of that stuff. That's the site plan.
Yep.
Correct.
That's not
Right,
for
that's
this.
not
That's-
for this.
that
That's
is
what I'm just
correct.
trying
That's
to pull my brain
specific
out
to
of.
the use, yep.
So we can still deal with, and that's where the noise study and everything else will get applied to. So approving this is not getting ahead of ourselves when it comes to any updated stuff related to those other questions or areas, yeah.
Any other comments or questions before we vote? All right, all in favor?
I'm sorry, was there a second? Just,
There was,
Yeah.
Josh. Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Flat is approved. So findings of fact. Any discussion on what was commented there?
Can you talk a little louder, please?
I'm sorry. Council, any questions or any further discussion on the findings of fact? I didn't have any myself.
No, I just had the one.
I don't have any.
Okay. Any motions?
Motion to approve the findings of fact regarding rezoning.
Second.
It's a motion by Josh, second by Kate. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now we have an ordinance. Ordinance 275, rezoning the property from UR to I1. Anyone have questions or comments, or if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Before I make the motion, I mean, I guess I would say this was, if not 1A to 1B, to the almost, the most straightforward one to me too, based on current comp plans, the city's comp plan. I mean, is there any legally defensible reason why we would potentially deny something like this? And that's really said, like, I don't mean to put words in your mouth or have you speculate on anything. I guess,
Only unless you wanted to rezone it to another industrial. Certainly, only if you wanted to rezone it to a different industrial zone and not I-1. But otherwise, it needs to follow your comp guide plan for the zoning intended for that property, which would be industrial.
motion to approve ordinance number 275.
Second.
Motion by Josh, second by Amanda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lastly, grading authorization permit. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Any further thoughts or questions before we, or if anyone wants to make a motion, you're welcome to.
So I do have a question. With the warm weather, are we concerned that the bats have already gone and went into the trees that they're gonna start cutting down?
What I'm concerned about is compliance with the environmental, or the Endangered Species Act. And I am aware of nothing that would happen if they started removing trees now, or even up until June 1st, that would violate that. Not that we enforce the Endangered Species Act, but we do have a responsibility to at least make the developer aware of it. They have access to all the guidance and rules that we do, and I have no concerns that they're gonna be violating that act.
Who does enforce? Excuse me.
That's a lawsuit.
Who does enforce that?
The U.S. Fish and Wildlife
It's
Service.
Fish and Wildlife, okay. Any idea how they enforce that? I mean, do they send people out to construction sites, or what, or is it based on
They could.
complaints, or?
Considered a felony.
Excuse me.
It's a felony.
Thank you. I'm sorry, can you answer the question?
Well, the fact is, I don't know, because I've never had to deal with it before.
Okay,
However, I know that it's not the city of Elko New Market.
please. Thank you.
And I've heard 4/1, I've heard 4/15, I've heard June 1st or March 31st, you know.
So
they're-
with the change in status that happened on March 31st, there were hints and different ideas that came out, but there is now published final guidance that the developer has in hand and is aware of, so, and that, my understanding is it's June 1st.
Okay.
And we already touched on a little bit, you know, this grading is consistent with, you know, any other proposed law development we have going on right now, consistent with the any previous stuff, that precedents or other developments that we've done. And Kate asked the question about, you know, if it doesn't happen, again, this is where I was trying to peel out of one specific project. Based on the way that the preliminary plat is designed, any grading done is consistent with that regardless of the project going in, and is the, for lack of a better way of saying it, the sliver of trees that is slated for removal. And again, not specific to the Niagara project, but to
So
the plat
I would go
itself.
back to when you're doing development, commercial, residential, there's common assumptions related to areas that you need to clear trees regardless of, you know, lot lines may move within outlots, but the areas that are going to be developed and generally the trees that are gonna be removed. And in this case, there seems to be a lot of discussion. There's a finger, but it's right in the middle of lot 1. And any building of scale, which this development is guided for, is large footprint users, those trees are probably gonna come down. And so that's a decision, quite honestly, of the developer, of what they feel is necessary to take down for purposes, just as it was a residential development. These are the trees that we need to take down on the site for what houses may go on the lots that are within the development.
Maybe this is a stupid question or comment. I mean, if I owned this land, could I cut down any trees I wanted? Or
You
what
could,
is
you,
the,
no, that's not,
Provided you
it's
had
not a-
not submitted a application for a land use application.
So theoretically, they could
Or-
withdraw their application and still go in and cut down all the trees they want.
theoretically, yes.
Okay.
The reason why they need a grading permit now is once you've submitted a land use application, you're subject to our tree ordinance and tree removal ordinance. So if 9 months ago, they decided to do clearing on the site,
and by that you mean the landowner?
the landowner, whoever controlled the property at the time wanted to go in and cut trees down, they would have been able to clear those trees as the landowner at that time. But since there was a land use application submitted and would fall under the terms of our tree ordinance, they're required to comply with it until they have an approved tree plan, which is part of the preliminary plat. They would not be able to remove trees.
And the similar question I had to the comp plan, are there any legal or defensible reasons to deny permitting this based on our past practices or allowing this to happen according to our ordinances and whatnot that you can think of or hypothesize?
None that I'm aware of, unless the engineer had any concerns about the proposed grading or issuing the grading permit now, and it doesn't appear that there are any.
Our ordinance specifically provides
Provides
provisions
for
for early grading, contemplating that this is a not uncommon activity.
Okay. Rich, did you have anything to add to that or no? Okay. Does anyone want to make a motion?
I'll keep it going. Motion to approve grading authorization permit, Park I-35 Industrial Park.
I'll second it. So motion by Josh, second by myself. Any further discussion before I call for a vote? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Congratulations.
All right. On to reports. Administration.
So the first item under reports and administration is the classification and compensation market study group. As the council knows, every labor contract cycle, we go out and do a market study so that we are competitive within the market and able to us to recruit and retain highly qualified employees. Our current market group that we've used in our previous 4 cycles was originally established over a decade ago, and it may be dated. We have suggested to the council that we revisit that. In order to do that, we did take a look at a broader and more specific set of criteria that's generally consistent with the approach we took in the past, but it's just more specific. And we've presented those to the council within the memorandum. They include things such as population, your tax base mix, your median household income, and then there's a close look at the structure of the organization and how they deliver services. For instance, do you have your own police department or not? Is your public works inclusive, meaning that your public works folks do everything, or is it exclusive where you have streets separate from parks, separate from utilities? This is not a perfect science. There's this level of judgment as to where you put the emphasis. But staff, the management team has gone through and identified 11 cities that we feel are most similar to us for those purposes of identifying cities that are like us for purposes of doing a compensation study. We also identified other cities that were included in that mix but were not found to be as similar for council review and consideration in case you wanted to pull some out or put some in. We also took a look at cities that are most likely to take employees from us within the market. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they're like you. It means that they probably are more competitive than you and have more desirable elements. We took a look at that, and that's based on our experience with where we've had employees go, where we've had employees interview, and just some common sense related to geography, et cetera. And we've identified a number of cities north of us within the South Metro that fit that criteria, and there's a pretty easy list to get to based on our past experience. So what we're looking for tonight is council direction and feedback related to the market group. to see if you agree with it, and agree with the methodology that we used. I should note that we talked to the 3 most commonly used firms for doing this work. I spoke with representatives for each firm, and they agreed that this is very similar to the approach that they would use for also identifying a market group from scratch. So we'd be looking for council to provide direction on that with the intent that this would be our draft market group pending feedback from the consultant we retain. And then I'd also be looking for authorization from the city council to submit a request for proposals from the 3 named firms, which would be Baker Tilly, Abdo Eichenmeyer, and David Drown Associates.
Any thoughts, any concerns with what's proposed? I didn't have any, no.
No.
Seems like everyone's on board.
Okay, thank you.
Anything to relay from Public Works? I know there was a report in the packet.
Corey didn't have anything for me to relate in addition to the report.
We don't have Brady, so I'm assuming there was nothing police that was passed along.
Nope, he's at a conference this week. He did not have anything beyond the report that he wanted me to relate to council.
Okay. Engineering?
Nothing.
Okay. Community development? I know Renee's tied up. Is there anything for community development?
Just a reminder that starting here in June, we'll be doing the citywide sweep again, our annual code enforcement sweep, looking for common code violations, so.
Okay. Parks had minutes in the packet. I'm assuming there's nothing more for Parks that was passed along. Sure.
Maybe the only thing to note is that we have some additional candidates to interview for the Parks Commission, and we would anticipate having recommended appointments on the next council meeting.
Okay. All right, CCEC.
Easter egg hunt was an adventure, I heard. I was not able to be there. There was some snow.
There's some snow.
This is just me. I just like to talk about the Easter egg hunts. We meet on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, and we'll finalize plans for fire rescue days.
Yeah.
That's what we got going on.
The reports, I don't have anything for Scale's tomorrow. I thought it was the Historical Society. Does that sound right? We'll go with that,
Yep.
since no one else looked. Nothing to share for executive, anything for service delivery?
No.
Okay. And no Bryce, so no I-35 solutions.
I was there this morning.
You were? Okay.
Yes, no, it was a great conversation. The Metro Transit and MVTA gave a ridership update and how things have been going or not going, or, as they bounce back or whatever, so. I'm sure they'll share the PowerPoints. There was a lot of talk on microtransit growth and stuff too, so like smaller vehicles picking up, a handful of folks instead of 60-foot buses that only have 5 people on them and are running constantly. So and I thought there was some good traction there potentially, and I think maybe down the road that could be something that could help us differently than trying to get the whole bus thing down here like we were thinking about before. Maybe there would be some potential actually for some micro transit opportunities. Dakota County's leading the way in a lot of this with Lyft and everything. So I think there was a good discussion. And saw Mr. Keeley, Councilmember Keeley from Burnsville, and thanked him for sending all that info related to the federal funding stuff that he sent us. So yeah.
Maybe the council's aware, but maybe for the audience to note that we've been scheduled for a hearing on Monday to pitch the County Road 235 interchange. We get 2 minutes to convince the Transportation Committee to move some dollars our way. So that'll be on Monday afternoon.
Are you doing that?
I will be doing that.
Okay. All right, any discussion by council?
We're done.
Is there any public updates related to the water appropriation permit process or where things are at that can be shared at this time, like where things sit?
Things are in progress. We expect them to get heavy into the technical review in the next few weeks. And really the timeline is in their court. They haven't given us a specific timeline related to how long it'll take to process.
And any studies or testing? I keep beating this one, like, who pays for that? And how much, is there an estimate of cost of what it's gonna cost us, or whoever, to do these pumping tests? That if it weren't for a high water user, we wouldn't be paying for it if it was a different user?
I don't, no, that's not true. Anytime that we go for an appropriation permit, if they require us to do any sort of testing, we would have to pay for that testing.
Would we, and have we, or will we get rationale from the DNR of why any pumping would be needed? And then in that, if it specifically says because of a use of a specific project, versus if we were just asking for 365 million, would they, I'd be curious if they call anything out in that.
I've had
determination.
discussions with their staff. They're blind to the use. It's the volume of water that you're pumping. I've asked that specific question.
But will they not specifically do the pumping to mirror what we think will be the pumping occurring based on the usages within that? I mean, I find that hard to believe.
It'd be more reflective of the amount of water we're asking for. So 365 million gallons a day, they would turn that into some sort of a equivalent daily volume or gallons per minute. And that's more likely would be, it wouldn't be based on any particular use of the water. It's the total amount. They're looking at the impact of that use.
If you can imagine, if they're permitting us for 365, they want to make sure, they want to do stress testing on the aquifer and well interference issues that reflect 365 million gallons of water. Who that gets distributed, it's blind to who that gets distributed to. It's the volume that you're pumping.
I think, well, I'll bring it up again. I'm not satisfied with that, so I think, yeah, more to come on that.
Any other discussion by council? That, any motions to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Kate,
Second.
second by Amanda, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everybody.